Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in on you. Look, I'm not going to even be long this morning. I want to follow up with sort of an outro of the video I did on the 101st memorial of the Tulsa race massacre that took place in Tulsa, the Greenville subdivision of Tulsa, which was affectionately known as Black Wall Street. Look, we don't understand that we're on the last front of a war for supremacy in this world, and it has been fought on the terms of Europeans and whites for the last at least 400 years, and some can argue as many as six. If we look at some of the instances and things that have happened on the continent of Africa, but if we're talking about the plight of foundational blacks or African Americans or descendants of slaves, however you prefer to refer yourself, but those who literally come from the lineage of those who built this country, blood, sweat, and tears, there is a history of this war that is being waged, and it's being waged on a number of different fronts. The last frontier of the war is the battle for the mind, which has always been waged, but there's always been other intricacies involved in how it's been done. Now there's a full out assault on the black mind. And if we're not careful, we're going to find ourselves completely out of the box. We already sit at the bottom rung of the socioeconomic ladder. And so I want to talk to you about that just briefly. Before I do, I want to remind you that we are in the middle of a fundraiser. So look in the description box and support the work we do. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I don't have a lot of time, but you know the work we do. If you've been around me, and I've been literally here doing this here on social media for what, 12 years. I have been doing it in the community live for almost 30. I take what I do seriously. So there's so much work to be done. There's so little time to do it. So I'm asking for your support. When I think about what happened in Tulsa, again, I pointed this out, is that we had a group of Black people who, at that early stage in the distance between emancipation and the freedom to move about and create our own, had created an entire 36 square block radius of nothing but Black businesses, Black enterprise, Black homes, Black interconnectivity in which we thrived. And this wasn't some utopia. This was happening around the country. It was happening in Rosewood. It was happening in Wilmington, North Carolina. It was happening in Slocum, Texas. And the reason that these states are being named here is because all of these states are in the South. And that means that in the very place where we suffered the atrocity of slavery, and we had Black codes, convict leasing, Reconstruction, and so many other things working against us, we were still thriving. Now, here is the challenge, and here is what we have to look at, and then we have to understand the enigma of today. What happened is our people mastered, literally mastered economic science. They had an understanding of economic science. They knew the importance of building an economy vertically, where you have retail, you have distribution, and you have manufacturing. The more you control in that vertical sphere, the more longevity you create in business and the more power you possess. It's so important to have vertical group economics and not just simply have stores, because stores have to have suppliers, distributors, and distributors are coming from manufacturers. And when others control those, they control the price. That's why it's so hard for Blacks, who make up 96% of the revenue that goes into the beauty and supply industry, and only make up 3 to 4% of the ownership in the same industry, is because we are trying to get in on the ground level of retail, and we're being outpriced, so we can't keep stores open. You have Asians who own the manufacturing and the distribution, and so they are giving it to Asian retailers at a fraction of the cost they're giving it to you for, and they're outselling you, because the bottom line at the end of the day is it's hard to buy a $3 comb over here when I can get it for 75 cents over here, and I can go on and down the line. So how do you change that? You create vertical economics. So, but our ancestors back in early 1900s in Tulsa and Slocum and Rosewood and Wilmington, East St. Louis, and some parts of Chicago, I mean, we were really doing our thing economically. Here's the problem: we didn't understand military science. See, anytime that you have something of value, it's viewed by those outside of you in different ways, and other people find it offensive, other people find it threatening, other people look at your growth and your potential power as it continues to expand as an infringement or a threat upon their very existence, and so they start looking for ways to disrupt it or to take control over it. And you have to understand military science, and I use Israel as a prime example. Israel is literally a small strip of land that sits in the middle of what we call the Middle East, where it is a predominantly Arab-held region, and Arabs literally despise Israelis. Israelis. They literally despise them, and yet here Israel is since 1948, when they went in and assumed that space. They're still there, and they're still, yes, they have an excellent Air Force. They have probably the best counterinsurgency, counterterrorism training. I mean, par with the SEALs or better. And they have that, but they're small. They're sitting right there. It's nothing to drop major missile attacks on Israel. Why haven't they? Because Israel understands military science. They created allies with powerful forces like the UK and the United States, and others that are there basically saying, don't touch them. This is what will happen to you. And it's not just a military thing, it's economic sanction. It's so many other things that are in play. There's also there's also intelligence operations going on in all these other countries to create these destabilization that takes the focus off of Israel. There's so much that goes in to these military engagements, but the ally is something that we did not create. We did not use our dollars to create allies in places that would have made laws and made it very uncomfortable, illegal, and unprofitable to attack Tulsa, or any of these other places that were attacked, burned down, destroyed, and people were killed. We didn't understand military science, so we left ourselves exposed, and it cost us dearly. And so we kept bumping our heads till we stopped believing we could do it again. And the truth of the matter is, we all possess the capacity to do it again. The thing is, we have to take the money we have and we have to invest in ourselves. We have to invest in our education, our programming. The thing we're talking about is the battle of the mind. I've talked about the battle of mind. I've talked about education extensively. And I've always talked about education from the point of it being a holistic empowerment and preparation of Black youth to go out into a world that's inherently hostile towards them and not only compete but win. I see education as being far more than simply the attainment of academic skills. I see it as first and foremost being an introduction into one's identity and self. When you don't know who you are, you open yourself up for people to tell you. And when people tell you, they tell you based off of how they can manipulate and control you. And so here we are, and we don't have an identity. And so the battle for the mind is really weighty right now, because we are trying to get to a point. That's what socialization is. It's an introduction into self. Oneself now, oneself in the future. It is how oneself fits into society. It's how oneself acts in society. It's how oneself triumphs in society, by knowing who I am and knowing my strength and knowing what my responsibilities are and living up to my potential. But it starts early on, and we're losing the battle. In my second book that deals specifically with how we educate our kids, I talk about how academics is actually being used to destabilize the mind of Black youth in academic apartheid. If you want to check the book out, you want to get a copy, the link is in the book. But what I'm talking about here is that we leave far too much of the process of educating our children to those who oppose our interests. It was Malcolm X who said that only a fool trusts his enemy to educate his children. Yet here we are. And we are going to pay the price if we don't learn how to properly empower and prepare our youth. We have a lot to learn from what they did in Tulsa, but we can't teach that to 25-year-olds and get the same impact we can if we instill it and inculcate it into the minds and subconscious of a 4 and 5-year-old, to where they grow up knowing early in life, I'm going to be a business owner. I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to invest in my community. I'm going to teach my family about generational wealth early in life so they understand what it is, and they're not caught up in consumerism. They're not caught up in attempting to prove to somebody what they have by what they wear, that they're caught up into building legitimate, long-lasting, and solid assets and reducing their liabilities and debt so that they can sustain a lifestyle and project power, because power is going to come from your ability to move on your own and to impact the pockets of others. We live in a world that is driven by money. And if you can't control the flow of money, the movement of money, and how money is perceived, received, and handled, you are going to have problems. And that's one of the things that we need to be teaching our youth, but we also need to be teaching them who they are so that they don't lose themselves in the Eurocentric idea of what is, so they don't become caught up in an explanation, a definition of their Blackness outside of the scope of their heritage and their history. We have a responsibility that we're currently not living up to, and it's costing us generation after generation of Black youth that are gifted, Black youth that have resilience, Black youth that have an audacity, but we're wasting it because we're not preparing them. We're not engaging them. We're not doing the things that are necessary for them to be at the top of their game so that they can exploit opportunities when they see them. And that's something that we are definitely going to have to change. I could go on and talk about this, but again, I have to get out and go somewhere. Here's the thing. We cannot continue the way we're going. We're losing the battle for the mind. And as we lose the battle for the mind, we lose the war. We have to change trajectory, direction, and we have to be emphatically, intensively engaged in how we prepare our youth. I mean, there's a lot to learn from those enclaves like we just talked about, like Tulsa. But there's much more to be taught. There's much more to be learned. But we don't have a whole lot of time. We're on borrowed time as it is. So my challenge is that we start to come together. Despite our differences, despite our hurts and our pains and our frustrations with one another, we are going to be dealt with based on our Blackness. I don't care what anyone tells you. Money will take you out of certain things, but there has to be a collectivity and power that extends beyond one individual, because I've watched what they do to Black wealthy people. The first opportunity they get, the first slip up or the first sign of vulnerability, they go for the jugular. They want to destroy. And that our leaders need to be pouring into our collective in a way that when they move on our leaders, we respond. And when I talk about leaders, I'm not talking about celebrities and famous people or even the ultra wealthy. I'm talking about the people who are putting their hearts and their gut, their sweat, their tears, and in many instances, their money into the empowerment of our people. Those people have to be insulated. They have to be protected. And our children are our future, so they have to be insulated and they have to be protected. The question is, are we doing it? And my answer is right now, no. So on that note, I'm gonna get ready to get out of here. As I always say, live your life on full. But here, I'm going to ask you again, support the work we do. Be a part of the solution. On that note, I'm out of here. I got to make moves. We'll talk to you guys later.